All right, so pleasure to actually kind of semi-meet you in person. I know we've got a lot of the same Facebook friends, and you probably looked at when I sent you that message like, who's this guy? Oh, we know like, I don't know, 100 of the same people. Like, he must be okay. So.
No, man, I've seen you on there many times. So.
Yeah, I hit you up way back in the day. I'm still gonna actually like release that recreation of the Rick Kua track. I'll be satisfied. I think that was like the first time ever.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah.
We're going back now.
Yeah, that was the first time I tagged you, and you know, and like when I saw Rick Kua comment on, I might have been I was like, Rick Kua's on Facebook, you know, and we knew like 50 of the same people. I was like, I'm gonna send him a friend request, but anyway, it's not about Rick Kua or my.
Hey, Rick Kua is one of the nicest human beings I've ever known. He is a brother. He is just a supreme human being. Just he loves people. He loves God, and it's certainly it reflects in his everyday personality. So
that's awesome. I hope my sister met him back in the day, and I have not had the pleasure yet. I hope I get to you know, kind of like the whole reason that we you know, that I contacted you. You know, like there's all these. You know, it's like we respect the generals of the faith, but we don't. We really the musicians, man, the music artists, for some odd reason, just kind of get. I don't know why they get forgotten, man. You know, and folks
I
are.
don't know. It is kind of an interesting scenario. You know, it's all the years I've been doing this, and yeah, it's like the artists always, you know, they get all the accolades. Well, I mean, but that's fine. It's not that I need accolades or anything like that, but I just always thought, you know, there's been a group of us guys for many years that have supported these people in the studio and done a massive amount of work for them on their projects and stuff. And yeah, it's just kind of like you said. It's oh well, we're just kind of wallpaper.
Yeah,
So,
well, you know, and that's even the second thing because you know, not only are these legacy Christian artists forgotten, I mean, nobody even talks about the cats that played on those records. So, and you can, you know, why don't you know, tell all the people that that are watching, I mean, give them kind of the highlights. I mean, you played for everybody and their mother, right?
oh my gosh, yeah, I've played for so many people. I probably can't remember right off. You know, I mean, in Christian music, it's just like one time or another, I probably worked, you know, especially people through the 80s and 90s and through 2000, you know, there's most all those artists I've worked on their projects at one time or another. So, you know, I mean, it's been anywhere. Well, obviously people like Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith, Bebe and Cece Winans and Twyla Paris and Carman. Yeah, a bunch of played on a bunch of Carman. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll get to
Very
and
sad day.
we'll do the Carmen stuff on the back half, because what I might do is I might chop up this interview, and because it's been a desire of mine, brother Tom, to kind of wake the church musicians up. I know you're friends with Michael Whitaker, and he's done several posts on, you know, just what's the word? I don't know, the childishness, or just the monotony of modern Christian music. It's so in them chasing this perpetual cyclical thing, you know, like, oh, you know, Hillsong did this thing, and then Bethel did this thing, and then Elevation does this thing, and then they just start copying each other, and it's become so homogenous. I mean,
Well, you know, yeah, and that's pretty indicative of any type of music. It seems to be. Especially in this age of pop music. I mean, let's be honest, most of Christian music of the time is reflected by what's going on in the pop world. And so now you know, the whole pop world is just inundated with these simple, you know, 4-chord songs, you know, things that kind of really go nowhere for me. But
many of us.
but that's and so, you know, it gets copied. I mean, it's just that's kind of reflected over the Christian music considerably. So
Yeah.
it just is what it is, and it's going to happen. It just always has happened. You know, I mean, I remember early on, you know, working so much in Christian music stuff and writing, and mention no names, but I actually had a publisher one time said, and this was when Stevie Winwood's big song "Bring Me a Higher Love" was. So I had this publisher said, "Write us a song that sounds like Higher Love." I'm like, I can't do that. That's called you get sued. That's a lawsuit thing. So, you got to be original here at some point. So, but that's the way some people tend to operate that way. They know what works in the mainstream thing, and they want to roll with that. So, but that's not always bad, but it's. But if you notice, anybody that has any huge success at all are people that are originals. I mean, people. I think originality, it possesses qualities of honesty, and you're being true to yourself. You're being honest about who you are, and you can't fool people. People really pick up on that. They just do. So
integrity. What a novel idea.
Yeah. So when you become some cookie cutter artist of some type, your career is going to be short-lived. There's no doubt if you have one. So.
Yeah. And who cares if you have a 10, 15-year-long career if as soon as you disappear, you're forgotten.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But people that, originality, those that make their own way in this whole biz and this industry are people that will be remembered, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Give me some of the highlights, man. Some of the like where you started, how you got into this, and like from believer. Were you saved before you got in the music industry? Did you get saved afterwards?
Oh yeah, I grew up in church. My mother saw to it that I was there every Wednesday night for Bible study, every Friday night for fellowship meeting, every Saturday night for the youth service, every Sunday morning, and every Sunday night. So. I was gonna be a Christian one way or the other.
Thank God for godly mothers.
Through osmosis or something. So,
your ticket is reserved, son. You gotta go.
Yeah, that's it. She was determined, and you know what? Thank God for a mother like that. Really.
Amen.
I look back. There's many times like, man, I just wish I could go to a ball game tonight. But I love my mom so much for being that way. She's been gone now 9 years. So, but thank God I've had a great mother like that just kept me between the ditches. So
you're saying more church helped keep you saved, not like let's do less church and see how that works out for you, right?
Right. There was no option there, So, of course, in the day I grew up, living in a small rural area in Missouri, we only had 2 TV stations anyway. So, you might as well have just gone on to church because
you might see something because there ain't nothing on television.
No, I really thank God for the way I was raised. I do. It's just. It was a wonderful small community that we grew up in this Pentecostal church, and they very much encouraged music. And some of these services would go on for hours. Unlike today, where if you go for 20 minutes over, man, people are getting uptight. So. Oh
yeah, they're writing letters. They're sitting there in the pew writing a message to the pastor online.
Exactly.
I got a tea time. I got 11:15 brunch.
But I aside from the church thing, I had a very eclectic background musically. I mean, growing up in the Ozarks of Missouri, the bluegrass thing, country music was very prevalent. So I was exposed to a lot of that, played a lot of it. My father was a great bluegrass musician. He loved that type of music, and I was always hanging with him, going to people's houses and just having jam sessions. There'd be somebody with a guitar and a fiddle, and when I was a kid, the first instrument I learned to play on was a mandolin. I was about 7 years old when I started, and my dad just gave me a mandolin one day and showed me a few chords, and then I spent the whole week totally obsessed with this instrument, and I just couldn't put it down, and so I just kept going forward with it, and till I got old enough, my hands would fit around a guitar neck. Then next thing I knew, I had his acoustic guitar neck in my hands, and I was going for that. And then one day, I heard what I thought were two guitar players. And it turns out it was this guitar player, Chet Atkins, probably one of the most famous guitar players in history, really. And, you know, he had this rhythm thing going on with his thumb and playing melody with his fingers. I'm like, I'm obsessed. I'm like, I got to know how to do that.
And you didn't have YouTube, so you had to figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, I sat there with my mom and dad's monophonic Motorola and dropping the needle on the record, literally. I mean, just for hours, you know. Now then you can go to YouTube and there's somebody that have it all explained and demonstrate it and have tab for it and everything else. But no, I had to figure it all out. You know? So
you imagine?
So, you know, so
do you ever wonder how like
Jerry Reed were my heroes early on?
Oh yeah, man, Jerry Reed, man. Goodness gracious.
He was just funky. He was just funky finger picker, man. He could do it. I mean, he was just you're instantly pulled into what he did, and man, that cat could play, man. He was just ridiculous. But then, you know, later on, there was this group called the Beatles that, you know, I'm like, oh wow, those guys made the girls scream. And then there was many other things. And the first time that I heard Terry Kath of Chicago, that's when I just like, oh my gosh, that is the best guitar tone I've ever heard in my life. This thick, nasty sound that he got out of this thing that he just kind of sang, you know, when he played it. And it's like, I got to know how to do that. So, I mean, I've been in a lot of different directions, you know. I was influenced by a lot of jazz players from there, a lot of blues players, country players. I just, you know, you name it, I loved it all. If it was done well, I loved it. So.
So what was like your first gig, and then like your first non-professional, like a defining moment gig, or one that you can just remember, and then like what was the gig or the job that got you like headed in the career direction?
Well, one of the first paying gigs I actually had when I was about 15 years old. I had a friend of mine that he was a local guy that sang country music, and he was only a couple of years older than I was. And he got us a gig playing on an awning on the top of some department store. So one time, and I'm like, "Hey, this is kind of cool, you know, up here in the clouds playing music, you know." But I later on, there was a group of guys that came to my church when I was about 16 years old, and they were guys around my age, you know. And there's family. There's three brothers, and there was 3 sisters, and mom and dad, and they were a gospel singing family, and turns out they only lived about 40 miles from me. And so that night, when they sang at our church, I just sat in and played with them, and they loved what I did. And so I started traveling with these people on the weekends and stuff. Their names were, the Baxter family was their name. So I started working with these guys, and got real involved in the Christian music thing, and which led me to following these guys. They eventually moved up to Central Illinois, and I would go up there and visit them, and they were working at a ministry there, and so this church actually sponsored the group, and so I went up there one summer and just kind of hung out and worked with these guys on the road and stuff, and did some crusade things, and one thing led to another, and that's when I met my wife, and so through that, we had been, when I married my wife, my daughter, Natalie, who's a big songwriter here in Nashville now, she was about a year old at the time. And I had gone to an Imperials concert when Russ Taff was there with them and traveling. And so went to the concert in Lincoln, Illinois. And so that night I ran into some friends of mine that had opened for the group that night. And I was talking to them at the halftime of the concert, and I told them, I was thinking about cutting out and going on home. And one of the guys said, "Hey, you may want to hang around here." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And they said, "I understand that they're looking for a guitar player for this group." I'm like, "Oh, okay. It's worth a shot." So afterwards, I went up and approached Armin Morales, and I said, "I understand you're looking for a guitar player potentially here." And he said, "Well, do you play guitar? You know, the big deep voice of his. And oh yeah. So as it turns out, James Holohan, the guy that was actually playing bass, he was trying to decide whether he was going to move over to guitar or if he was going to continue playing bass. So that night after the concert, they got me on stage, they got me up with the band, and so I auditioned playing bass and guitar. And so they hired me that night, and for 2 weeks I didn't know what I was actually going to be doing. So James made up his. So I was like, I know I'm moving to Nashville. I know I'm going to be touring with the Imperials. I don't know if I'm playing bass or guitar right now.
Can you play both, son? Can you maybe play both? And that way we don't have to pay two guys.
That's right. I tell you, if I could have, they would have loved that. like most touring groups would.
Oh, yes.
But so as it turns out, James decided to move over to guitar. For the first couple of years I played with those guys, I actually did play bass. And then when Russ Taff left about 2.5 years into my stint there, James was good friends with Russ. So he left and went with Russ and did his solo thing. So then I moved over to guitar from there. And I played guitar for those guys probably another 2-3 years, something like that. And then I got an offer from Amy Grant. She was just kind of up and coming, and they asked me about going out on the road to tour with her. And
give me the years, like about what year? What year did you start with the Imperials, and what year did you start with Amy?
I remember. Well, in November of '79 was when I started with the Imperials, and I knew it was going to be a busy year because at the end of that year, Armin Morales gave us a date book for our Christmas present. so we quickly filled that up. As a matter of fact, that next year I was gone about 250 days that year, and that was definitely tough for a young married couple and my wife, you know, with a 1-year-old baby at home.
Wow.
So yeah. So, but
wasn't no FaceTime back in the day, man. That was like, you know, you were doing pay phones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. There was no such thing as cell phone then. So anyway, I toured with those guys. I was about 5 years, and then '84 I started with Amy. February of '84 we started rehearsals, and then even when they hired me then to play with Amy, I was first told I was going to be playing guitar, and then they came across this other cat, good friend of mine now, Jerry McPherson, great musician. And so they decided they would have Jerry play guitar, and then I was going to be the bass player again. So I couldn't get away from the bass playing gig for a while. So
it's good to have those multiple hats, though, right?
What's that?
It's good to have those multiple hats to, you know.
Well, yeah, you know, that's one thing I've learned about being in the music business is it's good to have multiple hats to wear, you know. So that's why now in this day and age, that not only do I play guitar on sessions, but I also produce, and aside from producing and writing, I program tracks from the ground up, you know, the whole thing, you know. So, I mean, if somebody needs strings, I do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very meticulous about making it sound like the real thing. Horns the same way. So, you know, I do all the programming work in the world that I can do right now. So I'm really been busy with that kind of stuff, and I enjoy constructing things from the ground up. But anyway, back to touring with Amy. About the first tour I did, I mainly played bass, and I did play guitar on a couple tunes. We switched out. Gary Chapman would play bass sometimes. So then I got in between tours, we had a year off in between the what was the Straight Ahead tour and the Unguarded tour. And right before we started rehearsals for the Unguarded tour, I got a phone call from Gary one day, and he's like, "Okay, here's the deal. You're now the guitar player, and I'm going to be playing bass." So from then on, I've stayed into the guitar world, you know. So not that I don't mind playing bass, but the reason I don't enjoy playing bass is because I do a lot of fingerstyle guitar, and so I have these fingernails.
And that is very hard to play bass with.
With bass, that really eats into that big time, those big strings, man. So
yeah, it kind of forces you to play with a pick, and that, you know, that's not always the appropriate sound.
Exactly. You want a little more flesh in that to get that rounded tone in the bass. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I've just hung with guitar ever since, and so that's kind of how I got into the whole Nashville scene, and just through touring with those two major groups at the time, who were both, with Amy and the Imperials, they were both kind of at the top of the thing. So they just kind of threw me in the limelight with a lot of other people. And next thing I knew, I started getting calls to play on records from people. And so one thing led to another. And I've, for years now, I've just been doing the studio thing mainly. So we'll take a detour. Let's take a detour from Christian music and just give me some of the highlights of the secular artists that you've worked with. Oh, secular, that's how you know somebody's churchy, when they use that word. I got it. I hear you. Well, living in Nashville here, obviously there's there are definitely country music artists here, aside from Christian music artists. I have worked on records for like Faith Hill, Wynonna Judd, played on some things with Vince did a duet one time with Faith Hill that I played on. Dan Huff was producing. He had me come in and play some guitar. And Charlie Daniels. And then, across the board, there's been people like Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins and Barry Manilow.
Wow.
Some of the legends. And Glenn Campbell. I played on about 6 different projects for that man. And
wow.
He was what was really cool about working with Glenn is that when I was a kid, the first 45 single, if anybody knows what those are these days,
they're coming back. They're coming back.
Final single, an actual record. The first one I ever bought was Wichita Lineman. Glenn Campbell. Then to think all these years later that I ended up working on 6 different albums with him is just kind of mind blowing to me. So
that's
such
crazy.
A great man. He was such a great man. I was heartbroken when he passed away. Alzheimer's is what a horrible disease. But man, he was fabulous though. I mean, he was such a great human being. He loved musicians because he was one, and he just loved hanging with all of us fellas in the studio and stuff.
Yeah,
he was funny guy.
So, like, what's some of the stuff that you did with Michael McDonald and Kenny Loggins, and then we'll go back to Christian land. We'll go back to church.
Actually, Kenny, I played on one of his records a few years back, and I can't remember what the title of the album was, but I did a bunch of guitar work on it. So, and then Michael, there was a Christmas project that I actually played on for him at one point, and with Michael too, I had done some one-off things here and there with Yamaha events, that type of thing. So yeah,
cool.
Great fellas.
So how did you meet? One more question before we go back to Christian land. I have to, as a Toto fan, I have to. How do you know Lukather and those guys?
It's been about 10 or 11 years ago. Let's see. Yeah, about 11 years ago, I did an instrumental project, and there was one song on there that I just ended up having a group of singers on there, and it ended up being quite a group of singers. But there was like Christopher Cross, Mandisa, and Melinda Doolittle, and Amy and Vince, but one of those singers was Bill Champlin.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah. So Bill, that was the first time I'd really met Bill, and he agreed to come sing on this project. So we just really hit it off, and he became a huge proponent of what I was doing, and he seemed to love my work. So he said, "You gotta meet my buddy Jay Graydon," and he said, "You guys will hit it off." Well, sure enough, I mean, he introduced us, and we have been like tight as ticks on a dog, right? Ever since. So man, he's just Jay's just been a great guy. So I ended up in this. There's a thread that I'm in of guitar players, and so Jay pulled me into this thing, and it's he, and it was Lukather, but there's also guys like Steve Morris.
Oh yeah,
Dixie. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dixie Dregs. Goodness gracious, woo.
Yeah, Steve Morris, Steve Vai, and another great guitar player from New Orleans. This guy Phil DeGry plays harp guitar like crazy. He's just crazy good. And then Dean Parks and Lee Ritenour, all these cats are on this thread. So especially this past year, everybody got to share a little. Everybody's sitting around bored. So occasionally somebody would throw up a tune or something, but then one day, out of the goodness of his heart, Jay, he said, "Hey, you guys got to hear this one tune from Hemby's jazz record." So he threw it up, Then after that, man, all these guys have been so gracious to me. They wanted to hear more stuff I was doing, so I just, kept, clogging the airwaves with things. And but they've been so appreciative and so kind with their words and so encouraging. It's just like there was just a lot of pinch me moments there with those, with all the comments being said and stuff. So that's how I got to know Lukather, and through that thing. And then he has come to town a few times, and I, I've hung out with him when Toto was here, when he was here with Ringo Starr, and took him out to get some hot chicken, that kind of thing.
I saw. Well, yeah, and that's why I asked, because I was like, when I saw the pictures, I was like, oh man, he's probably known him since like the 80s, because Mr. Hemby's been over here working with all these mega cats. So
well, I knew of him. He didn't know of me, but but no, it's been great, having a relationship with all these cats, So they're just I mean, that thread is just stunning.
I bet.
Amount of talent on there. So just to even have somebody that would even consider listening to what you do was just blew me away. So, but beyond that, they listened and asked for more, and they're all so gracious. Just marvelous players, legendary players, and they've been so gracious to me though.
Yeah, I gotta put I have a thought, but I'm gonna come back to it because I don't want to go off the rails. It's a little aside, but it has to deal with a question that I'm gonna ask you in a little bit. So basically, for anybody that's listening and watching this, down the road, just go to All Music and put in Tom Hemby, and you'll see just a ridiculous list of credits.
That's what, when you hang around long enough, people start feeling sorry for you and they hire you. So.
I ain't seen Tom up a bit. So, is he alive? Somebody give him a call. What do you do? Hey man, you want to do an 8 to 12? You want to do a what you got? What you got? Yeah, my short-lived Nashville days, and it was getting clogged when I was there. I mean, I don't know how in the world you guys deal with it now. It's ridiculous.
Well, obviously the music industry have changed dramatically over the last 15, 20 years. I mean, it is not the same for sure. But back to what I was talking about, having an iron in an area of fire, that is one thing that's just kept me going. It's just being able to do all that I do. So it's just taking everything that you can muster from a talent pool to keep things going, keep the lights on.
Yeah, I always admire cats that just they just do that one thing and that's all they focus on. That's all they do. And I'm like, man, on the one hand, I wish I could do that, but on the other hand, I can't understand it because there's so much to music. I mean, that's how I got into doing production and engineering, is just I wanted to be able to create my song, and if you don't have all these guys and all this equipment, it's.
Yeah, I mean, I just got into it. I never went to school for any of this stuff. I just dove in head first with the rest of the guys, and I mean, experience is the best teacher anyway. So
You're absolutely right.
I've had the great opportunity through the years, not just to be associated with great musicians here in this town, but working for great producers who know what they're doing, and not just working for one particular guy. I mean, I'm working for so many different guys, and you learn a lot of different things, how they approach the song, how they go about getting their sounds and this whole thing. And it's been a wonderful thing to be a player, to go through that experience and then apply all of that knowledge you learn from these guys when you go into production for yourself,
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful thing for me.
Absolutely. So, we talked a little bit about Rick Kua, and I mean, I don't want to go back there because I could talk about Midnight Sun for the rest of this thing, and people that have no idea about Rick Kua or that album. I'm just gonna say go. Actually, it's not even on streaming. I don't know where you would find a copy, but I'm not gonna send you my. I have a legit. I still have the cassette. I have the cassette that I recorded into my DAW so I could have the digital copy.
What?
And I don't know why, of all of his albums, that one, I mean, that was on like a bunch of, the first time I ever heard of him was a Christian videotape on like a Friday night type thing, and it was, I Can, I Will, and Young Boy, Young Girl were the two music videos that were on that thing,
Yeah.
And,
to me, that was a special project. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, there was just a thing about that project, the way it came together and stuff. And
there's not a bad song on it. I'm telling you, there's not a bad song on it.
Yeah, that's it. The songwriting was great, for one thing. And then working alongside a world-class engineer like Bill Deaton, every step of the way, he was so great about getting great sounds and the whole deal. So, and we're talking about the days of analog tape. We only had 24 tracks on everything. So that's it. So, now then, when you're working in Pro Tools, you use 24 tracks for drum.
Add track, add MIDI track, add audio track, add mono track, stereo track.
I think now, how in the world did we do that? So,
bounce it down, son.
Playing on orchestra dates, when you got a whole floor, 60-something musicians on the floor or something, and you got 24 tracks. It's like, hey, we're doubling up here, aren't we? So, and sometimes the guitar players end up sharing a track with the tuba player, so you better not mess up, so the tuba player will have to go back and punch with you.
The pressure's on. Yes. Oh man, that's like it reminds me of the Joe Walsh when he was on Daryl's house talking about the Mojo, and I actually had a wonderful conversation with Leland Sklar when he was here. When he was with Toto. I got to work one of their shows, and I got to talk to that legend for like an hour and a half into like a 45-minute conversation and like a half-hour conversation after the show, and because that's what I love about y'all older. What's the way to compliment the older statesman? The elder statesman is he posted on his Facebook. He's like, riveting conversation, or like riveting day today on the bus, because like everybody was in their phones, and he was like, I don't want to sit in my phone. Human interaction. So like everybody else was just kind of running around, and I just looked at him and I said, hey, sir. My brother's I know of you because my brother's a huge bass player, so I know all the bass players. And he said, really? And an hour later, because I didn't have anything to do, and I was not trying to pull anybody away. And yeah, the knowledge he dropped on me, man, of that type of stuff, man, like, just not having endless takes, and you got to get it right the first time,
Yeah. Oh, I've worked with Lee, several times here in Nashville when he come to town and to work for a particular producer or whatever, but I always had a great time working with Lee. He's just, it's just a given he's going to be a fabulous player, but we just hit it off because we both love to cut up and tell stories and jokes and stuff, so there was always that relationship there with him that I really appreciate.
Yeah, he was funny. I'll have to when the world hopefully starts spinning back normal. I'd love to see if I could get you and Rick I would love to just do an interview just talking about Midnight Sun. I mean, just show love to that record, man. And pull the horn out and see if hey, can I play the sax solo on Something You Got? Something You Got? I mean, I'm telling you, brother, I could sing that whole album for you. Backwards. I know it like the back of my. I actually know better than the back of my hand.
Man, I haven't heard it in so long. I'd have to maybe go back and listen.
You have to shed it. You have to shed it. What did I play on this? How did I play that?
Yeah, I'm at that age now. I hear some things like, "Who is that?" I've done that a few times. Oh, that's me. I recognize that now.
That happened. There's this amazing smooth jazz bassist here in town named John Dillard. he's only put out one record, and it's amazing. And I was actually fortunate enough to mix like more than half of it and master, the same amount. And I'm at a family get together, and my brother, the bassist, he's playing the record, and he said, "Sounds familiar." I said, "Man, that's good. Who is that?" He said, and he looked at me like he thought I was joking. I said, "Man, that's really good." He's like, "You don't know this record?" I said, "No, I mean, it sounds kind of familiar." He's like, "You mixed it," and I'm like, "Oh!" So I understand, and I'm not even, I've got some grades, but I'm not that far yet. So, but I get it.
Yeah, a funny story about Lee. I was talking to him one night. I think maybe through Messenger or Facebook or something like that. He said, "Yeah, Tom said I never realized I'd spend the last days of my career in the back of somebody's bedroom in house slippers overdub and bass on a project." So.
Yeah, that could take us down the whole road of when he got into that, when he got into it with YouTube, and Rick Beato ended up, interviewing him because he was going like, like everybody, kind of, okay, we can't tour, what are we going to do? And, nobody's really wanting to cut records because, we're not making money from records, we make money from touring. Records just become, we'll have to do a whole thing just on the music business, but, that whole nonsense where he's playing his own parts on YouTube and he gets flagged, and it's like, I'm playing, this is me, we're strange world we live in, right? You don't even own your own self.
Yeah, I know. Go figure. There's some wacky things that need to be addressed on, with those kind of rights for musicians and stuff. That's ridiculous,
Buddy, we'd be okay, man. Go ahead.
I've seen even artists that been pulled from YouTube that posted things themselves, but their publishing companies pulled it. So it's crazy.
I mean, it should be, hopefully this next generation is paying attention. Some of them are just wanting to sell their souls, but there's some smart ones out there that are watching, and they're keeping ownership,
Yeah. Boy, it's definitely an interesting age here. But yeah, like you said, the whole thing of music, back in the day, you did a record, and you went out on tour to promote the record. Now it's completely the opposite. You do a record just to have merchandise to help support the tour, sell. So
yep,
it's really a strange and trying time for musicians, no doubt.
It is. I'm hoping that they'll get those streaming rates where people can make a living, man. I mean, you can't. I mean, how many artists can get millions of streams just to have enough money to pay their mortgage?
Yeah, I remember once, and my own daughter showed me. She's been a very successful songwriter over the last few years, and she showed me one of her quarterly statements one time from her publisher of some streaming things that she had like. Let's see, what was it, like 6 million spins of something, and she got $68. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So wrong.
Well, yeah, because after the label takes their cut, and the publisher takes their cut, and management takes their cut, and this one takes their cut.
Yeah, well, the whole streaming thing, it just caught the music industry off guard. And then what has happened, it'll never go back to what it was, because now then you have all the record companies that are in bed with that. They realize they can't beat it, so they joined it. Working their own deals with it. So
yep.
I remember one time, about 3 years ago, I did a favor for this friend of mine that was helping this young artist. And matter of fact, I saw her. She was on American Idol last year, I think it was. And but she went in. She had a date to perform for some guy head of I won't mention the record company, but anyway, she went to a record company here in Nashville to see the head guy. And so she had like a 5-song CD that he had gotten in advance, but I went in to play with her on 2 or 3 songs just so they could really hear what she does live, that she actually can sing. And so, when she got in there, the guy, first thing he did, he says, "So tell me, how much do you get per live show?" And I just saw this appalled look on her face. "So how much you make on merchandising and, all this stuff?" And and she was just squirming. And then after the fact, when they got back in the car with her, we head back to the publishing company, I said, you need to realize the deal is this. People are not making money on records these days. He's going to want a piece of everything you're doing. He's going to want your publishing, probably all of it. He's probably, want a part of your live event stuff, the whole thing. And
50%, man.
You know, that's what this has come down to. The 360 deal, they call it. So
yeah,
and I see. So I don't envy any artists these days starting out, because unless you are savvy enough and you are quite have it together as far as being a good entrepreneur or whatever, I mean, it's going to be tough.
Well, you know what it is, man. It's come full circle to where back in the day you had to build your fan base, you had to go town to town, and now it's easier because we don't have to go town to town. You just go online, and you put your music out there and you put yourself out there. But it takes time. I mean, that's what I've been doing because I kind of started. I started when all this stuff, when streaming went legal. When Napster legitimized, and I had an opportunity to sign a small jazz deal, but with the jazz label that was signing a bunch of people, and I looked at the amount, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is to do everything? I turned it down. I'm like, because I knew it was debt, but I was like, this is enough to not even pay myself to produce the album. I was like, what in the... It didn't make sense. So I mean, I still had success with that first record, but yeah, and it's been a slow boat to China. I never took the time to build a fan base. Just I'll let people put the music out there, so people have heard my music all over the world, but they don't know me. So I never benefited.
Yeah.
And that's what these younger ones have to realize.
Yeah, I know. It really is it's a tough situation these days. It just is. It's completely different than what it was in the 90s. I remember I saw some statistics a few years back that in 1999, which started to be the downward trend in the music business anyway, but in 1999, there was $26 billion generated in retail sales in the music industry in the U.S. 10 years later, in 2009, it was half that. It was $13 billion. And I have the sneaking suspicion it's probably been going down ever since. So,
Oh, I bet you it's gone 50% in the 10 years from 2009 to 2019. But the funny thing is, like, vinyl's going up. Yeah. Cassettes are actually coming back. And this is the thing of like building the fan base, because I took a marketing course a few years ago specifically built for musicians, but it can kind of work for anything. And man, seeing the numbers of these independent artists, I'm like, oh, this is possible. But you just got to focus on feeding your fan base, and I mean, I signed an independent deal for 2 jazz records, and I was talking to the gentleman that owns that label, and he was telling me about talking with one of the biggest saxophonists on planet Earth. He was talking about, his fans have been feeding him through the lockdowns. Like, just, he's been doing little live stream stuff, and they're like, hey, buddy, we love you. Here's, several $1,000s. Keep doing what you do.
Yeah.
Build the fan base.
I know. Yeah, there's that for sure. I know. It's just, it definitely is a tough time. The music industry was already crumbling in it, and then this COVID thing is just... It's just like the knife in the back. So
yeah, I have. Go ahead.
I don't know. I understand too that I heard this other statistic that this is through the Nashville Songwriter Association that if I'm not mistaken, I think there's like maybe. I think somebody said there's like maybe 6,500 or something like that. Less professional songwriters now than there were 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So, unless you're just really doing it, it's nowhere to be had. So, I mean, royalty income is just nowhere.
And that's where they ate. That's where all the writers eat. That's what people don't understand.
I don't mind saying it at all. I am no fan of Spotify. I do not have Spotify. I do not plan to have Spotify. I don't do any of these streaming services that just are, I feel like, are raping musicians.
Mm-hmm.
I just do not do it. I'm not going to condemn anybody that has those apps, not at all. But personally, I just know what it's doing to the industry, and I just want a part of it. So
I don't blame you.
I'll be yeah. I have no problems with iTunes. I mean, I think it's a fair thing. It figures out.
They play pretty, and they pay a.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Obviously, it'd be great if it were more, but it's not horrible. I mean, the sad thing is YouTube and Spotify have set the bar so low. Anybody else that pays more than that, you're like, oh, wow, you're paying me.
I mean, I understand it's two different things. Spotify, it's ownership. You're owning the song. Not Spotify, but iTunes, you're owning the song. Spotify, you're just paying for streaming of the song.
Well, no, you have Apple Music. I mean, Apple Music is still streaming, but their streaming rates are, I mean, it's far better.
Yeah. Well, you got to look at the way, to me, compare streaming rates is to compare what terrestrial radio. I mean, it should be more comparative to that than it is, a thousandth of what radio plays. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And you know what? We're not getting any help from anybody in Congress about any of this stuff. They really don't care.
Nope.
Flat out.
I think one of the best posts I saw, and I didn't reshare it because I just, you know how it is, man. You have to keep your thoughts to yourself on social media because anybody and everybody, especially this last year, no matter what you say, unless it's dog farts and cupcakes, man, somebody's gonna pick a fight with you. Yeah. But one of the best memes I saw was where are the benefit concerts for those that put on benefit concerts?
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant. It's like, man, it's, every time somebody needs help, it's like, hey, we need to have a concert and have some music and raise some money for these people. And it's like, well, what about the people that actually do that? What about, because all of us have been put out of work for, or had to really change the game, how we do things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just that with me, I've been in it too long. I don't know what else to do. So I just keep moving on ahead,
Yeah.
And somehow I stay busy, and God's been faithful, and so.
Speaking about the faithfulness of the Lord, so let's go back and now let's talk about Carman, and that's going to lead me into a couple poignant questions. And thank you so much for this, man. Like I've got a heart for getting you guys that nobody, that people just have no idea who you are, and these you the real musicians, man. It's time to get the spotlight on here and get off of these the kids that only know 3 chords and don't know who in the world there's kids out here. I can't tell you every church I've worked at in the last 20 years I've had to tell most of somebody that didn't know who Carman was. So many young musicians and young church musicians, like, and I'll show them his videos, are like, wait, this is a Christian art, this video came out in the 80s? Yo, this is kind of tight, man. I'm like, yeah, you never heard about this guy. I mean, it's it blows my mind, man. It makes me mad. I'm trying not to get mad here because it's I mean, that guy's done what I don't think any Christian artist has done since him.
Right. Well, Carman, there you go. Case in point, he was an original. He just had his own concept about what he thought it should be, and it was honestly him, and even not just even musically, but the way he did it concert wise too.
Yeah,
making it free to everyone, so everybody could come, and I think that by doing that, he probably made a lot more coin doing that than he did if he charged a ticket price. So I mean, that was very brilliant. I felt like on his part to do that kind of thing. So
yeah. Well, on one of his, I'm actually going to interview. I worked with one of his drummers for a time, and he told me, man, he took a bath on a lot of concerts. If it wasn't for the people that were supporting him, but
yeah,
never
probably those, but
I've been praying that that a Carman You know, I'm like, Lord, if it ain't gonna be anybody, let me do it. You know, because like to go out there and do like, do you imagine combining the mentality of a Carman and like, hey, this is a real outreach event, so you're not paying tickets to hear the gospel. You know, we don't charge for the gospel, and then you have a Keith Green idea of like, you know, he like whatever you want to give me for the record. I mean, it's just that's so foreign these days, man. Because these kids today, they're about the cheddar and getting the views and getting, you know, I'm famous, I got 1 million views, and it's
yeah. You know, the first time I met Carman, I remember. I think it may have been. It could have been in Estes Park, Colorado, when they used to have all the Christian music convention there. And but the next thing I knew, this was when I was traveling with the Imperials. I've been there a couple of years, and all of a sudden, you know, he shows up on the bus one day. He was riding a band bus with all of his guys. Because he's opening 30 days for the Imperials, and we instantly hit it off, you know, because he was a funny cat. He loved humor. He was witty, and which just is totally in my groove. You know, I love that kind of thing, and so we're always poking at each other and joking around all the time, pranking and stuff. You know, I used to do to him what I'd done to Russ Taff on the road too. You know, when he had his acoustic guitar. Back in the day, and all the hotels, they used to do this thing when they had the maid come in and clean. They'd always put this paper band around the toilet seat. You know, sanitize for your protection thing. You know, so I would grab those things and like with Carman, you know, before he would do his thing, guitar sitting on stage, I'd slip out there and slip it over the guitar. You know, sanitize for your protection. So, you know, just funny things like that all the time. You know, just always goofing around. So.
Sanitize for your protection. Well, you know, we're Pentecostal. We believe in sanctification, so your guitar is sanctified and sanitized.
Right. And you know, there was a lot of times, a lot of those tunes, those big hit tunes that he had, that I heard him first hand on the bus. Hey, Tommy Salami. He always called me Tommy Salami. He said, hey, check this out. Tell me what you think about this. You know, kind of have that little giggly thing about it, you know, and he'd play it for me and stuff. Yes, it's brilliant. Probably going to be a hit. And sure enough, you know. So. But he was. What I loved about him, he had a big vision about. You wouldn't have known it at the time, but when I think back now, I think that he was always observing, and he was putting things together in his mind. You know, it's like when we would be sound checking in the band and stuff, you know, he'd be off the side and he's listening. And I'm thinking that, you know, he's probably putting ideas together in his head about what he wanted to do in the future and that whole thing. You know, he was that kind of guy. He was a very sharp business guy, and he just had a great way of knowing what the pulse of the audience was. You know, he knew he learned to push those buttons, you know, the way he did. Mm-hmm. He could do it. And,
it was a God-given gift.
He just knew how to. He's a communicator. He just knew how to communicate with people. You know, just flat out. He just knew how to reach the core of an audience, and he was so gifted at that, and he was just a funny guy. You know, it's just, you know, I've played on, and don't even ask me, I can't even tell you what some of these projects where I've played on so many for him. I don't even remember. But I do remember the one thing that I loved playing was the God's Got an Army. You know, it was just this rocking thing.
And that's you on that recording. That's you on the recording.
Yeah. Actually, myself and Jerry McPherson. Jerry played this kind of lead line, and I was doing all this fill stuff, crazy, you know, kind of.
So
stuff.
who played the motif?
Jerry actually did that. Jerry did that, and then I was doing all the side fill stuff, you know, all the little flashy, you know.
All the stuff with the all the whammy bar stuff. Wow.
Yeah, I did all that stuff. Jerry played that lick, you know. So, you know, it was fun to get to do stuff like that with him. But you know, it's funny. I just was talking to my good buddy and legendary producer, my gosh, Michael Amardian, and we were talking about Carman. He said that you remember back some years ago, he produced a couple sides on it for a project, and he said he came out to L.A. and said he was in his studio one day, and they've been working. All of a sudden, he just went missing, and he couldn't figure out where he went, and didn't hear anything from him. And so, come to find out, he left. He went down to some furniture place, bought a office chair, and came back, and he got on top of Omar's roof of the studio, and he was sitting up there sun tanning in the office chair.
He was tan, son. He was, you never saw him, it was funny, like, I feel like he should have had Clint Brown's last name, you know what I'm saying? Carman Brown.
Yeah. I told somebody the other day, said he was actually a combination of Sylvester Stallone and what did I say? I forgot what I said now, but anyway, and then one of them was George Hamilton, who always had the tan. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I could see that. Like, if you put Sylvester Stallone with one of the Goodfellas and George Hamilton.
Oh, man. Man, I love that cat, though. He was just, it didn't matter, I mean, sometimes years would go by and I wouldn't see him. And honestly, I felt so bad when he passed away, because I hadn't seen him now, and it's been quite a few years. It's probably been, oh gosh, I'm afraid to even say. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but but when years would go by, or months or whatever, we always just pick right back up where we left off, like it only been yesterday or something, so that's what I loved about him, it was always back to just fun and games, So.
That's how it'll be when when we see him in glory on the other side. It's going to be Tommy Salami.
Yeah. Yeah, Tommy Salami. Yeah, man, I'll miss that, because he'd always come up and he'd put that arm around my neck like that, pull me up there and say, hey, Tommy Salami, So.
Man, yeah, there's I tell you, I've been praying on how, and thinking on how to keep all that. There's so much great Christian music from 70s, 80s, and 90s that I feel like this whole generation of kids they're completely ignorant to. And I don't know if I don't know if I tagged you in this video. I made a video talking about like songs that the church has forgotten, and what bothers me. And I'm taking you in a direction. In the world, we don't disregard, the legends and those that have come before. We look at the Paul Simons and the Paul McCartneys and the Beatles and the Miles Davis, and we like, when they march out Elton John or Stevie Wonder in the Grammys, it's whoa, And in Christian music, it's like, oh, you're not relevant, man. We just throw people away, and I honestly, I don't want to say it's demonic, but it's definitely not helpful to the body of Christ to look at people that have had these kind of experiences and this, just have this knowledge and wisdom and music and skill and anointing, and we just say, give me your 2 cents on that.
Well, it's a bit complicated, I think, because, like I mentioned before, so many times Christian music seems to take the route of as being the copycat of what's going on in the secular direction. So when you have that going on, I guess it's just it's just tough sometimes to feel the originality or whatever, when there's so much. That's what we're talking about. This. That was so great about Carman. He just did his own thing the way he wanted to do it. And I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to say this too. My buddy Keith Thomas, that produced a lot of his records, outstanding. I mean, he really took those basic things that Carman did and made them masterpieces, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Fantastic on that.
The musicality in Witch's Invitation alone, which isn't even technically a song because he never sings. I have that on a list of tracks to recreate, and every time I sit down to think about like starting it, I'm like, this is gonna be a lot of work. There's a lot of music in here. There's a lot of different patches and samples and progressions and colors, and I'm like, and people just and they don't even know. And then you add the music video to it, man. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I just think, first of all, we're talking about the message of Christ. There's a lot of people that don't really buy into that, and unfortunately, this why we're a smaller group, smaller body of people, and so naturally, the Christian music thing is not going to appeal to the masses just because of the message. Because let's face it, what is out in the world? I mean, you can see it in the news every day. It's just freaking evil. So why would you want to buy into anything that represents a message of Christ? Through music, through film, through whatever art form. So there's that. You instantly have cut a potential listening audience way more than in half. Maybe 75%. Let's be honest. So you're dealing with those factors. The thing I loved about back when the CCM movement really started happening, it seemed like in the 70s and 80s, I thought there was a lot of great music written in that period of time compared to what's going on now. Really thought out, well written, lyrics and things that actually really said something that made you, when you heard the song, you just didn't, it wasn't like a little feely good thing for a second or two. It's very thought provoking. Something you would, you'd hear the song, then you'd have to live with it for a week and going, oh man, there's some great theology in that, or there's great motivation in that.
Yes.
And there's a lot back in those days. I think there was a really great songwriting, and my point is, back in those days too, all these record companies that came on, like with Word and Sparrow and different companies like that, they were exploring the unknown. So, as far as what this could actually sell, and I think that by and large, Christian music back then probably sold a lot more than they may have been expected. And you had artists like Andre Crouch to thank for that, artists like Steve Green, and the Imperials, obviously, and with Amy took it to a whole new level.
Oh yeah, Amy and Michael W. Smith, man, that was they were competing. That's why they went pop, because they were competing. They were pulling those kind of numbers, and they're like, like you said, you're selling to 20 to 10, 10 to 15% of the market, and you're selling as much as these secular artists.
Yeah, and that's what I always hated about she caught so much flack. Oh, Amy's gone secular. No, Amy's not gone secular. The world just happened to latch on to what she was doing. They dig it, so hallelujah.
Yeah.
Great message music right there in the pop mainstream world. So
looking for a reason, rolling through the night to find my place in this world.
Yeah, I know. That's so more great writing by guys like Wayne Kirkpatrick. Yeah, it's just that so I guess the point is that there's always going to be a certain amount of people who will just not listen to Christian music. It doesn't matter who's singing it. It doesn't matter if it was, Stevie Wonder or whoever. They're just not going to listen to it. They're not going to want to hear the message. But there certainly has been those like Amy that have pushed the boundaries, were able to push the boundaries and get into a whole completely different audience, which has been a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You think is that how we turn the corner? Is by doing that again, by having some artists just do what you do. I mean, I was sitting when I was waiting for your call, I was working on a music video it's I'm just like, what, man, I've never been one to, it's so funny, my last record deal, I delivered what I thought was a smooth jazz record. He's like, man, this is jazz record, this ain't smooth jazz. And I was like, well, I delivered good music. is that how we turn the corner in Christian music? Because such a steep downward, trend. And I don't care how many views it's getting, how many spins it's getting. The songs are they're disposable, and now they're becoming interchangeable. And you can go on the forums, and you can go on Instagram and worship leader problems and all these funny Instagram accounts, and you can see the people like these kids are starting to realize like they're getting confused because they're playing a song and it sounds exactly like the next song, and they don't know where they are because the progression is the same.
Sure. I saw a thing on YouTube. It's been some time back that somebody put together in the country music world, who's just
they spliced all the songs together.
Yes, they took 4 bars of each song and made one song out of it. It was the same key, the same tempo, the same progressions, just different singers.
The lyrics even fit together. It was mind blowing.
Yeah, I know. It all ended up being a theme about jeans and beer and trucks. So so yeah. I think people, by and large, really. Well, I know that I do. Maybe not by and large, but I pick up on originality and honesty. That's the first. When I hear something that's like fresh, I'm like instantly pulled into it, regardless of what it is, what style of music. It's just like, in fact, that grabs my ear. Then that, I'm going to be listening to more. But if I'm hearing the same thing that I've heard on the radio over and over and over and over till I'm sick of it, I'm not going to bother to listen.
Yeah. No, I think most people are getting that. Most people are getting that way. It's, that's why. You got Jacob Collier, appearing on all these television shows, and now he's up for Grammy of the Year. I think it's high time the church realizes, hey, we have. It's so sad that it took Kanye West pulling a choir out for the church to be like, oh, we should do choirs. I'm like, we should have never stopped doing choirs. That's our bag. That's our thing.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, Jacob Collier, that kid is amazing. I met him one time here in Nashville. He did a seminar over to David Lipscomb College and talked with him afterwards. Very interesting cat. Very talented, very very talented. But
very much so.
Yeah. It's just I'm just happy to see him doing what he's doing. Bringing jazz to the forefront again.
Mm-hmm.
Such a great art form.
So yeah, man. So give me your last two. Give me a final thought on whether it be about Carman or maybe something you want to tell a young musician, or thoughts on church music, or if you want to encourage somebody, tell a joke.
I'll just say this about Carman. We certainly lost a great. We did. He was legendary. He was bigger than life, and a true man of God. He loved sharing Christ with people. I know that, and he'll be sorely missed. I think it's a huge void here. I really do, in the Christian artist community, and he'll be missed greatly. But as far as encouraging young musicians, I've said this many times. Well, first of all, if you're getting in the music business, here's my advice: is to don't trust anybody who says "trust me." Get all your money up front and make sure the contract is tight. So, personal experience.
Very wise words.
But as far as just doing what you're doing, I'll put it this way, which I've said before. If you love music, you love what you're doing, you want to eat, drink, and live music, but don't let it mess up fishing. If you know what I mean. Work hard at it, but don't let it be your everything. You got every once in a while you got to break away from it and get into real life with people.
Mm-hmm.
But you just sorry here.
Almost perfect timing.
But yeah, just go for it. If you love what you do, it shouldn't matter. Money shouldn't matter. Wealth, if you're doing it for that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Because I learned to play music because I loved it. When I was a kid, I just absolutely was obsessed with it. when I was a kid, I would play, in the summertime when there wasn't school, I would sit and play all day long. I would get up in the morning, grab my guitar, play till lunch, eat lunch, play till supper time, play till bedtime, and then get up and do it all over again the next day, You just, if you love it, go for it. And don't let anybody discourage you. I'll tell you, right, personally, I'll tell you a little quick story here. When I was in the 5th grade, when every kid started a band, I didn't get in band because I wanted to do stringed instruments. And growing up in a small town, they didn't offer anything, violins or anything like that to do. So, oddly enough, or coincidentally enough, I should say, the band teacher that when I was in the 5th grade, I started that year, a great guy. He taught for a couple of years. He got drafted in the military. And so in the meantime, this other teacher came in right out of college, and I had him in a music appreciation course. And he knew that I played guitar for him one day. He knew that I had an interest in music, knew that I loved music. I approached him one day when I was like in the 8th grade about, hey, is there any possibility I can get back in band? And this man told me, he said, well, what do you want to play? I said, well, I thought about maybe getting into percussion. That's what my brother started doing. My brother was 4 years under me, so just started percussion. He said, well, I got too many drummers as it is. Besides that, you waited way too late in life to think about getting involved in music. This is a teacher.
Wow.
Telling somebody in the 8th grade,
a kid,
way too late in life to get. And so, fast forward a couple of years later. Actually, it was a year later when the other teacher came back from the military. He was a great teacher. He was wonderful, and I remember telling him that what had happened. He's like, man, you want to be in the band? I'm starting you next year. I'll work with you all summer. I'll get you in the marching band. We'll get you playing percussion. In the concert band, I'll have you play bass guitar. You double the tuba and stuff, So I always thank God for that man that encouraged me so much when I was so discouraged by somebody else that just absolutely was about to send me down the wrong path of life, because I thought I had blown it. I was a big dumb kid. I didn't know any better. I'm like, oh man, I waited too late in life. So I will say to this, all you people out there, all you young kids, that don't let anybody like that rob you of your dream. If you love something like that and you want to do it, you go for it. It doesn't matter what anybody says to discourage you. You just go for it, because you got to follow your heart. You just got to.
Beautiful.